UFC 302 is taking in my home state in New Jersey this Saturday. I want to see this event live, but I'm not trying to leave Newark at 3 in the morning, nor do I have $800 to spare for a decent seat. I'm OJ, and I'm here to break down the fights you should keep an eye out for coming UFC 302. Before we get started, I just want to point out I am not a financial advisor, and you should gamble responsibly. With that being said, let's start off with the main event of Islam Makhachev versus Dustin the Diamond Poirier. Makhachev should rightfully be favored, but I'm going to pick Poirier. Not because I want to see Poirier to win, not because of the Paulo Costa curse, not because Poirier is undefeated in the month of June, because I genuinely believe he can win this fight. Even though Poirier has never beat a grappler of Islam Makhachev's level, and he has the hips of a 70-year-old grandma, and Islam Makhachev is the scariest man in the lightweight division, I still see massive improvements in his grappling defense compared to when Poirier fought Khabib Nurmagomedov. When you watch back the fight between Poirier versus Nurmagomedov, it was Poirier's lack of attention to body locks and clinch work when he would be held up against the fence. Rather than fight the hands out and break the body lock grip, he would try to elbow Khabib or try to explode his way out as Khabib was right there to intercept him. This only served to tire Poirier out, and after a Hail Mary guillotine attempt, Khabib popped his neck out and sunk in that rear naked choke to tap Poirier out. When you watch this fight with Michael Chandler and Benoit St. Denis, however, you can just see how much more willing he is to grind those uncomfortable positions out and tend to body locks more rather than squirm his way out, even if it costs him the round. Now, some of you guys might talk about the guillotine and how Islam Makhachev is going to get the Von Flue choke or the arm triangle choke, but Poirier only jumps the guillotine when he's backed up against the fence. You saw in his fight with Benoit St. Denis back in March, you'll notice how every time Poirier latches up a guillotine, he usually backs up against the fence to do so. And he also does a good job angling his choke arm away from the fence while keeping the rest of his body onto the fence. Sure, Islam Makhachev can find a really good position off that guillotine, but I don't see Poirier pulling guillotine unless he's by the fence, and even if Poirier does pull guillotine, I don't see an immediate Von Flue choke coming or an arm triangle just because of the cage. This leads me to my section on Islam Makhachev. I really like watching Islam Makhachev. I don't think he gets nearly the level of credit he should be getting, but against Dustin Poirier, there's just one big problem I see. My problem is that Makhachev doesn't throw enough offense on the feet to pressure Poirier up against the fence. Yeah, he can shoot out in the open, but that's about it. More times than not, we're going to see Makhachev use his footwork, distance management to catch opponents off guard with a fast left cross down the pipe, a winging right hook as he circles off, or even a single leg, like when Drew Dober tried to overextend his right leg. He does have good kicks, but because they are both standing in southpaw, it's just so much harder for Makhachev to find that kick. I know some of you are out there talking about Justin Gaethje knocking out Poirier with a head kick. First off, like I said earlier, because they're both in southpaw, the head kick is just so much harder to get. Second, Gaethje was able to pull that head kick off because he would throw in multiple strike combinations ending with the head kick. Makhachev doesn't throw multiple strike combinations, and at most will open with a straight left down the pipe with an occasional right hook. Now, the people who are able to back Poirier up against the fence are people who throw multiple combinations to pressure Poirier, like Benoit St. Denis, Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, or even Khabib Nurmagomedov. Makhachev is a far better striker than all of these fighters, but throwing multiple strike combinations is the last thing Islam Makhachev is going to do. Not only that, but Poirier has similarly good defense on the feet. He just stays more offensive compared to Makhachev, so it's just not as noticeable. So I don't see Makhachev being able to catch Poirier with anything unless it's to the body, but we never really see Makhachev throw strikes to the body, unless it's once in a while with a kick. Now, we have seen Makhachev outclass world-class strikers in the division like Charles Oliveira, Dan Hooker, and Bobby Green. But those three were all caught by overextending with a flying knee, inside leg kick, a teep to the body. Poirier's strictly going to stick to his boxing and leg kicks, so it's going to be very hard for him to catch. Him with strikes at least. Sure, Islam can get submissions because he's a far better grappler, but if he does get the submission in round 1 or 2, I don't see Islam getting the submission as the fight goes on. We see Makhachev fade in the later rounds if they do not break this suffocating pressure, and that leaves him more open on the feet as the fight goes on. Fair enough, he's only been in 5-round fight with Alexander Volkanovski, who is known to push one of the hardest paces as the fight goes on. But it is undeniable his best work comes in the early rounds compared to later. Now, Poirier has been known for weathering out storms, and he has a more defensively responsible approach than when he fought Khabib Nurmagomedov or Charles Oliveira, at least in the grappling. I'm taking Poirier to KO Islam Makhachev in round 4 or 5. Moving on to the co-main event, Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa. If this were a 3-round fight, I would pick Paulo Costa. But since this is a 5-rounder, I am picking Strickland to smother Paulo Costa to a decision. I see why some people are picking Costa, because he doesn't have to worry as much as when he fought Whitaker. Whitaker mixes in kicks, 3-4 punch combinations, karate blitz, lateral footwork, and Sean Strickland's just going to come out here with a jab, cross, and a teep like he always does. You can also argue that the head kick's not always going to be there for Paulo Costa, and Strickland generally struggles a lot with head kicks. Well, we've seen Strickland being able to adjust to kick-heavy opponents like Israel Adesanya and Abus Magomedov. I will also give credit to Costa for his cardio. Despite looking like a fish out of water, he somehow puts it all together, like when he fought Marvin Vettori. But Marvin Vettori does not have the same pace as Sean Strickland, so I would still favor Strickland in the later rounds. Yes, Paulo Costa has some power in the shots, but so does Dricus du Plessis. Not only that, Dricus du Plessis has more one-punch knockout ability with a longer reach, and Strickland ate those shots from Dricus du Plessis. Although Costa doesn't have to worry about variation, like when he fought Whitaker a couple months back, neither does Strickland. Dricus found a lot of success with high kicks, but that was because he mixed in overhand rights, stand switch jabs, and good initial takedowns. Paulo Costa's kicks are better, but that's about it. Dricus is an overall more well-rounded fighter with a lot more output than Paulo Costa. Not only that, Strickland's jab always finds its mark in the later rounds, so knowing what Strickland's going to do is kind of pointless unless you have one-punch knockout power like Alex Pereira or maybe Dricus du Plessis. Paulo Costa is notorious for lacking one-punch power due to his short, stubby arms. Both fighters are known for KOs, so I expect Strickland to pull away as the fight moves on, and I don't see Costa being able to win at least 3 rounds. I'm taking Strickland by a decision. Now, 80% of this card, excluding the main and co-main event, is hot garbage. And I could care less about some of these fights, but there are a couple of fights that I am really excited to see. I was annoyed that these two are in the feature fight of a pay-per-view, but this is going to be a good scrap. I really like Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. I like how he's a savage, he's always game, and he's really fun to watch as the fight progresses. The problem with picking Oleksiejczuk is that Kevin Holland is just so much better than him. There's one thing you need to know about middleweight. Welterweights moving up into middleweight make middleweights look like trash. Unless you're too short like Joaquin Buckley. Kevin Holland is moving back up to middleweight, and he's still taller than Oleksiejczuk with a reach advantage. Holland has more weapons compared to Oleksiejczuk, like slick jabs, kicks with variation, jiu-jitsu, clinch work with knees up the body. Oleksiejczuk, on the other hand, relies solely on Rocky Balboa type boxing. Even if Oleksiejczuk will try to grapple, Holland is a far better grappler on a technical level. And as the fight goes on, I can see Oleksiejczuk getting closer to landing a flush left down the pipe, but it's really hard to knock out Kevin Holland because Kevin Holland has a chin made out of granite. I don't expect a one-sided massacre like what Michel Pereira did to Oleksiejczuk back in March, but I think the skill gap between welterweights and middleweights is too much for Oleksiejczuk. I am taking Holland to win a comfortable decision, but I could see Holland getting a KO in the later rounds. Moving on, Kopylov versus Cesar Almeida. Now, this fight is going to be fireworks. For those of you who don't know who Cesar Almeida is, he was a former kickboxer who knocked out Alex Pereira back in Pereira's kickboxing days. He has a slick jab, precise low kicks, a right hook that can knock out anybody, and nasty ground and pound with a pretty good understanding of grappling. Kopylov's tool bag, on the other hand, is just so much deeper compared to Almeida's. A laser beam left cross, whip-like left kick, a really good right kick, stone hand jab, gut-wrenching knees up the middle, and crippling spinning back kicks, just to name some of the things he does. Kopylov does leave himself open to the right rear hook, and he does not check leg kicks very well. But that's about it. And like I said, those are Almeida's best shots, but he needs to time it very well because he doesn't really get to timing early, and he relies on feints in order to set these shots up. Getting into a feint battle and trying to time your shots is the worst way to approach a fight against Roman Kopylov. Now, I will say, Almeida does have better jiu-jitsu, but he relies on his opponents to shoot takedowns in order to grapple. Kopylov's not going to shoot takedowns anytime soon, and Almeida's either get into clinch and use judo or use his own takedowns if he wants to get it to the ground. I don't see either of those happening, and even if Almeida practices those two things throughout his whole fight camp, Kopylov has some of the best takedown defenses in the middleweight rankings. He defended all but one of Anthony Hernandez's takedowns, and Hernandez is the scariest grappler in the division. In short, Almeida is going to get picked apart at range because Kopylov has the reach advantage and more versatile tools. There is a chance Kopylov leaves himself open to the right hook, but that's only if Almeida throws in multiple strike combinations to close the distance. I have never really seen Almeida initiate multiple strike combinations to close the distance, and I don't see him starting that at the age of 36. This fight will stay at range, and Kopylov will piece Almeida up for the first round and eventually find the KO in the second, maybe the third. I'm taking a second round KO though. Now, this last fight really interests me. I know this is going to be below a lot of people's radars, but I find this interesting because it can go one of two ways. Either Grant Dawson is going to maul Joe Solecki over the course of 15 minutes, or this is going to be a very awful striking match. Regardless, I think Dawson's a better overall fighter, and he should get the decision, maybe a submission. Both Solecki and Dawson are really good at grappling, but the difference is that Dawson has way better entries for takedowns and much more suffocating control. I mean, you can see it when you compare Dawson's performance over Jared Gordon to Solecki's performance against Jared Gordon. One guy was mauling Jared Gordon, and the other guy was struggling with Jared Gordon. Even if Solecki's able to take down Grant Dawson, Dawson has some of the best defensive grappling I have ever seen. He's so quick to get off the ground and either reverse position or get back up standing. Solecki, on the other hand, more content with pulling guard and staying on bottom because he's a jiu-jitsu guy. Now, Dawson strikes like he has ants in his pants, but Solecki's not that much better. Dawson has some power, and Solecki has better timing, but nothing really noticeable. Ironically, both have nasty ground and pound. It's just that they can't hurt a fly while standing on the feet. Ultimately, the difference I see between Dawson and Selecki is that Dawson's able to better dictate where the fight takes place. I don't see Selecki being able to control Dawson for long, even if he does get a takedown. If Dawson takes down Selecki on the other end, I see Selecki staying on bottom and losing because soy jiu-jitsu and pulling guard does not work in MMA. But these soy jiu-jitsu specialists will do it anyways. I expect a decision win for Grant Dawson, but if he can get a submission over Selecki, that would be really impressive. The rest of this fight card is not that good. I do not need to see Jailton Almeida lay on top of another morbidly obese fat man for 15 more minutes. I know there's the Randy Brown versus Elijah Zaleski dos Santos fight, but I'm not really sold on either of them. Maybe I'll start following the career of the winner, but I'm not really sold on either of them. As the rest of this card, these fights do not bring anything interesting to me, and I'm just waiting for Conor McGregor's return at this point. Until then, goodbye.